Welcome back to Rough Cut Woodworking. In this, the last of 3 videos on how to do doors, we're going to take the door that we just sanded and prepped for finish, and we're going to spray it. So we're in front of our finish room here. Let's go spray it, make it look good. Here in our shop, we're very fortunate to have a large array of guns, of spray guns that we can use. I have 3 of them that are set up. On the far left, it's labeled up in the top, colored lacquer. In the middle, we have our primer, and then on the far right, with the most powerful sprayer here, is the clear lacquer, the clear finish. To start, if you're doing a colored lacquer, you need to prime it. So we're gonna grab the middle gun. Now all the guns are located in this little can that's wrapped up. It's a can that just has a bunch of lacquer thinner in the bottom, so the guns are just in there upside down. Only take out the one you're going to use so the others don't dry up and crust up. So we're just gonna grab out the primer gun, unroll 1 loop, and that's our gun. We're ready to go. First, take your door, and we're going to spray the back side first. We always wanna do the back. It's kind of hard to explain why, but simply put, eventually I'll do the front side, and I want this back side, the side that is seen the least, to be where it's sitting on something to dry the longest, okay? So we're gonna do the back first. And that of course goes for doors or drawers. The gun that we're using, let me spin around here, the tip is still going to be full of lacquer. So even pulling the trigger, and I'm not going to have any material coming out, that's just lacquer from what it was sitting in. Make sure to give that a shake. Try to get all that lacquer out as best you can. Now, on the gun, we have air, and I gotta pull it further, and then we get material. Pulling the trigger less doesn't give you less material. It's either all the way on or it's all the way off. So as soon as you pull the trigger, it's coming out. So that leaves, you have 2 main rules. Number 1, always be in motion while you're spraying. Spraying and keeping it in one spot will lead to drips immediately. Number 2, be the proper distance away. Now, normally, that's about 6 to 8 inches, give or take, about 6 to 8 inches. We can bend that rule, and I'll explain a few ways and reasons why, but we always want to keep it straight on, parallel. I suppose you could say that would be a 3rd rule. As you're moving and the proper distance, you don't want to bend your wrist to do this. So if I'm here, that's about 6 to 8 inches, but as soon as I turn, now from here to here is almost double that, and I turn, I'm back to 6 to 8, and I turn my wrist again, I've almost doubled. The further away you are, the slower you've got to go. So if I'm closer, I got to go faster. And again, this is a lot of rules, so let's go through some of the practical application. We're going to pull the trigger off away from the door. So I'm way off to the side here, and then ease through it. So I'm constantly moving, and at no time do I pull the trigger on the door or let go of the trigger on the door. I want to be off the door or drawer front or whatever. So here I go, I'm going to get that, just like that. So let me break it down, turn the door. As you pull the trigger, you can see that the material comes out in a cone. So it's going to be very wide, about 6 or 8 inches, give or take here. On the edge, I'm only spraying 3/4 of an inch. And so if I'm out here at 6 to 8 inches, I'm wasting upwards of 80% of my material. I mean, it's just going to waste. So I need to move closer. The downside is now I'm breaking the rule of being 6 to 8 inches away. What do I have to do to compensate? I need to go faster. So I'm really close, so I don't waste material. It means I got to speed up so I don't get drips. There we go. So I started off the edge, did the whole thing, let go off the edge again. Spin, get nice and close. I'm here, nice and even. One other thing is you may have heard the pump chug, okay? It's getting pressure. Once I use that pressure, it has to chug and give me more. You may see as you're spraying, as soon as it chugs for a moment, very little material is coming out. And I can see on the door, I can see it because I'm close. Right here, it's just missing a little bit. Now if you want to hit it again, just again, make sure you're in motion. There, I just hit the spot. Okay, turn the door, do it again. There we go. So the edges are now done. One other thing I wanted to mention is you may notice that my booth is not running. Have it running. Okay, I'm only doing this because I want you to be able to hear what I'm saying on the camera. Always have good ventilation. And one door worth is not too bad. A whole kitchen worth, oh yeah, it's gonna asphyxiate. So please have good ventilation. Now we're gonna do the surface. In this case, I have the door with some detail here. Now I've mentioned in the previous videos, this happens to be the back of the door. This is the front. But we still gotta get primer in there. And shooting straight down doesn't always get it right into the crook of this detail. So instead of being straight, I'm gonna put it at a bit of a 45-degree angle, and I'm gonna go across. And this is one of those times that I'm going to break my own rule. I am going to bend my wrist a little. It's called feathering. We're going to feather that in. I don't want to come across here and put a bunch of primer here, or later, colored lacquer, and then a bunch more here. I'm now doubling up in the corners, and it could get drips. So I need it to be a fairly light coat. Okay, so we're gonna go here, I'm gonna feather in, go straight, and then feather out. Feather in, go straight, and then feather back out again. Okay, so here on this side, feather out, and feather out, and then we do it again. Feather in and out, feather in and out. Okay, now I take the gun and go straight, and this is where I'm going to be perfectly perpendicular across and across and across. Start here, and then across, and you can see where it chugged a lot. I'm missing a lot of lines in the middle of the door. So go ahead and just hit it again. I'm gonna hit it lightly, so you see me going a little faster to fill in. So I need to even that out. That looks pretty good. Once you're done, we're gonna take the door and put it on the drying rack. Bring the door to the rack, and I try, if possible, to kind of hook it on the bottom on this detail. That way it doesn't slide all the way back, and it may stick a little bit in the backside, if possible. If not, leave it here, we'll let it dry. After about 10 to 15 minutes, you can take the door and prime the other side. So the way that I usually run it is, if I have a stack of doors or drawer fronts, I'll start with the first one and just go through the whole thing. Usually by the time I'm done with what I've got, the main stack, the first one's dry enough, I can just flip it and just start over. So it's been about 10 minutes or so, and I took the door, flipped it over. You're just gonna do the exact same thing. You don't really have to do the edge again. That doesn't matter, you've already done it. And so we can go ahead and do that same technique. Keep in mind, if you're doing drawer fronts, the only difference is I don't have to do that feathering around the inside edge with the lacquer gun. Now, I wanted to mention at the end of that, you notice that I never once let go of the trigger when I started doing the whole face. That's okay, but it can be a waste if you're not quick. So I started here, and you notice I went nice and slow, and as soon as I got to the end, I quickly came around and quickly came around again. The idea is that trying not to come to the end, spray, 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 then come on and do the next one to overlap, trying to waste as little material as possible. But now that you've done both sides of the door or the drawer front or whatever you're spraying, let it dry, and you're gonna notice it's gonna feel very rough. Sometimes rougher than others, it just depends, but we'll sand it right after that. Once all that primer is dry, and again, it dries fairly quickly, I zoomed in so that you can see how we sand it. Now, it is very rough, and I don't know that the camera is gonna be able to pick up on how rough that is. There's a lot of particles, dust, whatever. That's just the way it is sometimes, and we need to sand that off and make it smooth. So you're going to grab one of these sanders, these little block sanders. They're squishy, okay? They're on a sponge. The idea is, with this detail, I can just squeeze it in, and it gets the whole thing in a few swipes. Now, sanding this goes very quickly. You'll notice an immediate difference from rough to smooth after sanding for just a short period of time. So squeeze in and get those details. I don't want to feel the sharp edges or any roughness right there, and then lay it flat and get inside of all of that. Then, of course, do the outside, just like normal. If it's a little rougher in one area than another, sand a little more. That's why we prime it, to clog all those pores, and it should feel almost as smooth as glass. If it doesn't, a little more sanding. Flip it over, do the other side, the exact same thing. I'm using the edge of the sponge to get inside all these areas. Then sand down the face again. Now on these sharp areas, I just turn it just a few swipes, just to make sure this is not sharp. We sanded it before, we want to make sure there's nothing in there that's going to feel wrong on the fingers. Now we do the outside edges. So put it upright like this, and grab your sponge, and you're going to actually press down a little bit. Squeeze it in there, and 2 or 3 swipes is all. Then I'm going to, again, make sure this isn't sharp, so 1 swipe there, 1 swipe there, and I'm done with that. Do the same on the end. Corner, corner, flip and repeat. I usually only do 2, 1 there, 1 there. That's done. Same on the end. Here, here. So this is now nice and smooth, but as I'm sanding it, this is where you want to look at it and see, did I miss any puttying, any knots or anything? And they're going to show up as dark areas. So again, let's see how well the camera does. Right here, there's 2 little tiny dark areas that didn't quite get enough putty. And the rest of them look pretty good. So I'm just going to take my putty back again. And because it's so small, I'm just going to use my finger, push it in there, a little there and there. Then kind of ease it in there with a dry finger, if you will. If I have anywhere else, I might hit that right there. That one wasn't too bad. So all I've done is I've just kind of evened it out. Now obviously, if you've got a giant knot that you missed, then grab your putty knife and do that work. But with it so small, there's no reason to put a ton of putty on it. So now I'm just gonna let that dry for just a minute. It doesn't take long, it's so small, it literally dries in a minute, and a little light sanding, so I can't feel that. And now we are prepped and ready for the actual color and the clear to seal it all in. By the time you get to this point, you will have noticed that sanding primer puts white dust everywhere. It clings to everything and it makes a mess, so make sure that you blow all the doors off with compressed air. It's all over the place. Now, I put away the primer gun and I pulled out both the colored lacquer spray gun and the clear lacquer. They're sitting to my right here. Remember, the colored lacquer one is gonna have the yellow hose. It's the one on the far left, it's labeled colored lacquer. Make sure you don't mix them up. And the other one is the clear. Empty out any lacquer that may have been in the tip. And we're gonna do the same technique that we did before with the primer. Start on the edge, go close, and follow the rules that we mentioned before. Notice that I can go very quickly. I've done a million of these. Take your time. I'm just spinning it, and I can keep up with it. Keep that distance consistent as you're going across. And as you hear it chug, note it and see, did I miss any? Did the color not come out? In this case, we're using just off white. Now I did not do the feathering like I did before on the primer. I didn't go here. This lacquer is a little bit thinner and it will fill that a little better, especially since it's only white and we have a white base, the primer. If it's a darker colored lacquer, a lot of times I will feather that out to make sure I get every little bit. But now we're done with this on this side. We're going to put it away and we're going to immediately grab the clear lacquer. Again, get rid of any thinner that's in there. We do not want even a drip on the colored lacquer. It's going to leave a mark where it has dissolved some and it looks different. Should that happen, let it dry and then we'll just hit it with the color again. So should any marks come, by touching it, it's just going to make a mess. And by trying to cover it up with more, it's not going to get a lot better. So I've cleared out the tip. Now the clear lacquer is ready. And I'm just going to do the top, not the edges on this one. In my system, the clear lacquer gun comes out the fastest. So I'm a little further away and I'm going a little bit faster. I did the face. I didn't bother doing the edge. And the reason is, after this is dry and we're ready to do the other side, I'm gonna flip and then I'm gonna do clear. Because I don't want overspray on the edge where people's hands touch. Overspray is where lacquer lightly dries. It's not enough to actually feel smooth, but it feels a little bit like sandpaper. And I want that to all be wet because you see it and you feel it on the front, not as much on the back. Now, this is now, if I look at it in the light, it looks like a calm lake. Okay, it's a good way to put it, where I don't see a lot of ripples and I don't see any grit, if you will, any roughness to it. Put it up in the rack just like we did before. This time we're gonna let it dry overnight. Without a doubt, let it dry overnight, and then we'll do the other side. After it's dried overnight, take it, do the other side. We're gonna use the same technique. Again, I don't need to do the edge with a colored lacquer, but I will hit it with a clear lacquer at the very end. Take a quick look, make sure you didn't miss any areas. Get a good look at it, looks good. Now I'm gonna use the clear spray gun and use the same technique. So I'm really close, but I am going really fast. That's the edge. Further away, keep your wrist straight. And on this one we go much faster on the clear only. Pick it up and take a quick look in the light. Everything is covered, don't see any rough spots. Let it dry overnight, and then we can put in hinges. Now that your doors have dried for at least 24 hours and they've cured enough that you can touch them and handle them without leaving any major scratches or fingerprints, we're next gonna bring them to this machine. This is another boring machine or a drill press style machine, and the whole idea behind it is it's going to drill holes in your doors like that. Now this machine is set up to drill a large cup for your cup hinge, for the European hinge, and two small holes for the screws to go in. So the hinge itself looks very similar to this one right there. So this is the large hole, and then the two smaller ones are where the screws go in, and I'll explain that as we continue on. The way this machine works, first I'm going to explain how to set up your door, and then I'll explain how to know where to set up your door. So first of all, just to turn the thing on, maybe you can hear the air pressure hissing in the background. So it runs on air pressure. We just turn on the main with the red switch and you can see the green light turns on. So it's ready to go. All you have to do in this case is put the door in the right place and then press and hold this green button. And you can see that the press does all the work for you. Now you have to hold the green button until it gets all the way to the bottom of its cut. If in the middle of its cut it actually stops spinning because the wood is too hard, we have too much air pressure and it can't handle the pressure going down, then let go of the button and do it again until it does actually reach its base and it's still spinning. Now what happens when you press? Of course the drill bit is spinning around and it drills a hole. But in addition, these two clamps come down and hold the door in place, which is a really nice feature, so you don't have to hold the door yourself. The problem is when you let go of the button, the clamps don't release. And that's a good thing, but if you forget, then you're stuck yanking the door out and you may do some damage to the door. So all you gotta do is this switch on the far right, twist it clockwise. You'll see the word release there on the right. There, now the clamps have lifted back up. Now you can shift your door to do the other cut. So now that you understand at least how this runs, now I'm going to start explaining how we know where to cut them. We zoomed in so you can kind of see the bed on this machine. Now notice that there's a series of holes. And these holes I made with the exact same machine that we put these adjustable holes for adjustable shelves inside each of your cabinet boxes. So the spacing is exactly the same. So what we're going to do is, once we figure out which hole, and you can see that they're all numbered, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and so forth, you're going to take one of these little shelf pins. Now, as you can see, this shelf pin is flat on one side and round on the other. So this is flat all the way up, whereas this side right here, the base of the pin comes up and then it comes in a little and then up. So it's not flat per se. I want the flat side against the door. So once we figure out where that goes, you're just going to put the pin into that number with the rounded off edge, not the flat side, not this side here, against the hole. And then all you do is you butt your door against that pin. That goes in, butts against it, lay it down, and that's where you're going to cut. And because all of these holes were set in such a way that they're referenced to the bottom of the cabinet, they're perfectly referenced so that the door is going to be a 1/16 of an inch up from the bottom of the cabinet. We're going to drill, then you simply move the pin to the next number down a ways. Once that hits the stop, you're ready to drill your second one, and that's it. Now you figure out which door you're going to drill. First things first, which side is the face? In this case, the whole time through this demonstration, this shaker style edge is the front of the door, not this side that has the detail. It'll depend on what we're doing, but figure out this is the face. I'll lay it down and say, okay, that's how it's going to go on my cabinet. This is down, that's up. Great, I can reference that. Now we look at your plan, and this is just an example of one of them that we have done in the past so we can reference it. So let's say the measurements coincide to this cabinet. Fantastic. There's my handle right here, which means the hinges are on the right side of the door. So the hinges are on the right with the handle on the left, and it opens up out that way. Okay, so the hinges are on the right side here and here. I have to reference, or that pin goes against this end. So I have to take the door, turn and flip it over, because that's the side I want to drill. This is still the bottom corner that I was talking about. And we're going to go to the left. Okay, so this is where you just have to memorize. If the hinges are on the right, I have to actually be to the left, going towards the left side of this to cut. Okay, so one more time. Hinges are on the right, so this is the bottom reference corner. My hand is on it, I flip it over, and I have to push this end against the pin right there. Now take a tape measure and measure how big the door is. This one is 24 5/8, 24 5/8, which is a fairly typical measurement for us. On top of the machine, I'm just pulling it down from the top, we're going to round it to 25. We just round it off to the nearest inch. In this case, we'll do 25. 25 inches here. I want pins at number 4 and number 15. Okay, and it goes from 11-inch doors to 72, and you can see I don't have a whole lot of doors that big. That's a huge door. But at 25 inches, we have a 4 and 15. So I take my pin, and I can tip this out. I put it into number 4, slide it up against, and then I just push that back in again, so it'll hold it down. Press and hold this button. And I waited until it got to the bottom, and it was still spinning, and then let it back up. Obviously, this makes quite a mess, and I really feel like it's important to not let the door sit on all that sawdust while it's being pressed down. I don't want to dent or scratch any of this finish. So we release, blow away the extra, at least against the fence, and instead of just sliding this down and get my pin out of the way, I don't want to scratch it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift the edge so it's only touching on that far edge, and go down to 15 and then drop it down. Again, double check. I could feel that it had some sawdust back there. Take your pin, put it back in on number 15, and we drill again. Kind of shake or blow that off. But now your door has hinges that are perfectly spaced so they'll fit into my cabinets in the adjustable holes that we made before. Now we have a cabinet that has 2 doors, and this is very common for upper cabinets especially. When they're wider, you're going to have a double door. These particular doors go to a sink, underneath the sink, in a sink cabinet. So if I show you the plan, that's these 2 doors right here. So it's even labeled sink, and there's a left and there's a right. Now that does make it a little bit easier because no matter what, I know that I'm going to have one door going to the right and one door being cut to the left. So it doesn't matter which is which. only that you remember that you've got one of each. Please don't cut two rights or two lefts, because then the holes don't line up. So again, if this one is my left one, and this is the bottom corner that I need to reference from, I'm going to take it, flip it around, so that's my pin, and then flip it over because I've decided this is the front. Now obviously these have already been drilled in a previous operation, but then I would check its length, which I believe these are close to 24 inches, and then find my pins, 4 and 14. I just move that one out of the way. And as you get better at this, you've done it a few times, you won't necessarily need the pin, though this is more accurate because all of a sudden there's no guesswork. If you're good at it and feel comfortable, slide it up, in this case to number 4, and I'm just eyeballing with my eye down the line, and I'm up to the hole, but not covering the hole of number 4, and then I would drill. Then I would lift, slide it down, in this case to the next one, which is 14, and I would eyeball down, sight down, and I'm up to the hole, but not covering, and drill again, and I'm done. If that is faster, that's perfectly fine, but always remember, when you're done, take something, a pencil, a marker, whatever, and check off that these two are accounted for, and they've been drilled, and they're just waiting for hinges to be installed.